As we're going through chapter 30, you can highlight or underline all the references to humility and pride. That's the major theme of this chapter. Chapter 30. Kathy, could you read the first 3 verses for us?
The sayings of Agur, son of Jacob, or not something anyway, an inspired utterance. This man's utterance to Ithiel. I am weary, God, but I can prevail. Surely I am only a brute, not a man. I do not have human understanding. I have not learned wisdom, nor have I attained to the knowledge of the Holy One.
Okay, so in 2 and 3, not verse 1, but in verses 2 and 3, what are the 5 things he says about himself? Brute, number 1. Not a man.
This version says, surely I'm too stupid to be a man. That's what this version says.
Okay, yeah, stupid and not even a man. Good. Doesn't have human understanding is number 3.
No wisdom and no knowledge of the Holy.
Not learned wisdom.
Right, not wisdom and not knowledge of the Holy One. So that's something different than wisdom, a specific kind of knowledge. So, could you come up with a one-word summary of that?
Well, hyphenated words, self-deprecating.
Okay, yeah. Good. Any other options? Or a one-word summary?
Well, humble.
Humble, good. Let's go, just for the sake of something that'll come, let's go with lowly or low. Okay. But all those are accurate. All right, Linda, could you read verse 4?
I can try. Who has gone up to heaven and come down? Whose hands have gathered up the wind? Who has wrapped up the waters in a cloak? Who has established all the ends of the earth? What is his name, and what is the name of his son? Surely you know.
Okay, raise your hand if you know the answer to those 5 questions. Just don't say it, just raise your hand if you think you know the answer. Got 3, 4, 5 people know the answer. Okay, what is it?
Jesus.
Okay, yeah, it's God. Established the ends of the earth, wrapped the waters in a cloak, gathered up the wind. Yeah. What, you notice a little bit of sarcasm in this? Surely you know. What is the obvious wrong answer?
Man.
Yeah. Specifically, me, Agur, the author, and me, Jacob, the reader, and you, right? And it's obvious, like, who's done this? Have you gone up to the heaven? Do you know? Sure. Oh, you must know all about God, right? Yeah. And he just said, I don't have knowledge of the Holy One. So what's happening here is he's highlighting the disparity between God and man. You see that? So man is really lowly and God is really high above us. So a one-word summary would be high. Can you see the contrast that Agur is pointing out? Okay.
I think it's interesting, he said, and what is the name of his son? So here already is like a sort of prophecy of what's to come?
I don't know. I'll look into it. I've wondered about that. I think there's different views on it, but okay, 5 and 6. Lynn, could you read verses 5 and 6?
Sure. Every word of God is flawless. He is a shield to those who take refuge in him. Do not add to his words, or he will rebuke you and prove you a liar.
Okay, so why talk about God's word here? What do you think? don't know?
Teacher, you have to tell me.
Okay. I'll tell you. Because if we are incredibly low and God is incredibly high and there's a great disparity between us, the only way we're going to attain that, the only bridge is going to be if God reveals himself. Not if you're smart enough to figure it out. Surely you know. You can learn all about God on your own. You can get knowledge of the Holy One on your own, the way you can get wisdom. You can't. He has to reveal himself. He has to tell us about himself through his word. Has anyone ever heard the phrase, the philosopher's God? Ever heard that phrase? So, there will be philosophers who will say, if there's a God who made this world, he must be all-powerful because it's so complex. And if there's a God who made this world, he must be good because there's so many good things and we all are built in with a conscience. And so they figure out things about God just sheerly by philosophy. But Agur is at least hinting at the fact that you need him to reveal himself because he's so high above us. And if you look at people throughout history who've tried to figure out what God must be like on their own, you get all kinds of crazy gods. So we have to rely on him. So saying, don't add to his words. If you think figured out stuff about God on your own, don't add to his words because he'll rebuke you and prove that you're a liar. Okay. So, 7 through 9, Ellie.
2 things I ask of you, Lord. Do not refuse me before I die. Keep falsehood and lies far from me. Give me neither poverty nor riches, but give me only my daily bread. Otherwise, I may have too much and disown you and say, who is the Lord? Or I may become poor and steal, and so dishonor the name of my God.
Okay, so now I know God doesn't function like a genie, where you get wishes. There's only one instance in the Bible where it's like that, and that's where he gives Solomon. He says, you can ask for anything you want, right? But Agur, this is the only prayer, this is the only request in the whole book of Proverbs. If you could get 2 things, you say, God, I'm only asking 2 things of you. That's it. What would they be? What would one of them be?
Wisdom.
Okay. If you went up to people on the street and said, you get 2 things that God will do for you. Do you think people would say these 2?
Well, no, they'd say money.
They'd say money? He said specifically, please don't give me a lot of money. Has anyone ever prayed and said, God, please don't make me rich? Raise your hand if you ever prayed that. Please don't make me rich.
But I don't pray for him to.
You don't pray for him to make you rich, but have you ever asked him, please don't? No. All 3 classes, only one person raised their hand and said they did that.
Former Catholic priest.
I was I was a little skeptical of the person who said they had specifically prayed for that. But it's very interesting. Let's talk about his reason. Oh, well, what are the 2 requests? What's the first one?
Do not refuse me before I die.
Well, yeah, he's saying, please give me these 2 things that I'm about to ask for. Don't refuse me.
But
Keep
not,
me away from lies.
Okay, keep falsehood and lies far from me is the first one. And let's talk about the reason for that. Why? That's 2 blanks down. Why number 1? Why would he ask for that? What do you think?
His character.
Truth is very important. What do you mean by his character?
Make him a man of God, I guess.
Okay, so are you reading that to say, please don't let me be a lying person, a false person? Okay, good. There's 2 different ways to read it. You can say, keep falsehood and lies far from me, i.e. keep them out of my mouth. Don't let me be a false, lying person. That's option 1. Option 2 is keep them far from me. Don't let people be telling me lies. Right? You see how you could interpret that 2 different ways. Well, let's take them one at a time. If he's saying, keep falsehood and lies from me, don't let people tell me lies and falsehoods. What he's saying is, do that, protect me from that, because I am too foolish to see through the lies. I'll believe them, so please keep them away from me, God. You hear that humility? If it's keep them out of my mouth, it's even more humble. He's like, I don't even trust myself to tell the truth. I need your help. Either way, or both, he's saying, I don't trust myself. I'll either be telling lies, or if people lie to me, I'll believe them. Sometimes we trust ourselves far too much, and we listen to, we hear something about a cult and different beliefs, and we're like, well, if a Jehovah's Witness came to my door, I'd see right through those lies. Well, hopefully. Okay, number 2, it was give me neither poverty nor riches. Why would he ask for that? That's right. That's right. He's saying, I'm too foolish to handle either of those. If you gave me riches, I don't trust myself to continue trusting you. He even says, otherwise I might have too much and disown you. Say, who's the Lord? I don't need the Lord. I'm a rich man. I got everything I need. I don't need God. And if you make me super poor, where I'm missing meals because I have nothing, I don't even trust myself to not steal. I don't trust myself to just rely on you to provide for me. You hear how much humility this guy has? This is the attitude. I don't know if you remember that video. This is the example of the perfect reader of Proverbs, who comes in and thinking, I need wisdom because I have none. Unfortunately, I, and probably many of you, come to Proverbs with an attitude of like, okay, I'll gain some wisdom. I'm already pretty wise, but I can gain some. It's God's word. Anybody else guilty of that attitude besides me? I'm the worst one here. That's okay. Maybe, but we do struggle with that. So this is helping us see what we are. Okay. Now, verse 10, I had this whole thing with the black box trying to teach verse 10. I'm going to skip it. It takes too much time. So, Diane, could you read verse 10?
Do not slander a servant to his master, lest he curse you and you be held guilty.
Okay, so it sounds like it's a topic change, talking about servants and masters and cursing people. But it's really not. If you go to the right and go down to the bottom, and skipping that other stuff, I'll just tell you what I think it means. Apparently, some people considered slaves as so unimportant and low that they disregard the curses. That's just a slave. I don't care what they think about me. I'll gossip about them. I'll tell, hey, your master, guess what? Your slave was being really lazy or doing really bad work. You better beat him a little bit. Ha ha ha. Go on my way. I don't care what. So Agur is saying, even slaves, if they curse you, it'll come true. You're not so far above them. Okay. So I had a big spiel about explaining about cursings and blessings in the Bible and how we don't do that anymore. But another day. Okay, page 2. Anyway, but the point is, it's about humility and thinking you're too high above people. It's a great lead-in to this next section about these people. So, Candy, could you read 11 through 14, the top of page 2?
There are those who curse their fathers and do not bless their mothers, those who are pure in their own eyes and yet are not cleansed of their filth, those whose eyes are ever so haughty, whose glances are so disdainful, those whose teeth are swords and whose jaws are set with knives, to devour the poor from the earth and the needy from among mankind.
Okay, so all 10 lines of those verses are all about the same thing in general, and then the specific things about them. But so what is the topic? It's most obvious in 12 and 13. Pride, good. There's actually two, and you got the first one. Pride, and it goes along with pride.
Humility, judging other people.
Okay, good. Yeah, it has to do. So when you have this attitude, when you think about yourself, you feel pride. When you think about others, you feel something like judgment, but not quite judgment.
You just think you're better than that.
Yeah. What? Arrogance. Yeah, it has to do with looking down on other people. So we would call that disdain or perhaps scorn. Right? So pride and disdain, or pride and scorn. All 10 lines are about that. But verse 11, there are those who curse their fathers and do not bless their mothers. What kind of person curses their father and doesn't bless their mother?
Disrespectful.
Disrespectful? Why would they do it? Why would they disrespect them like that? Yeah? They think they know better. They're like, oh my, what a fool. My dad is an idiot. I hope he gets the gout. Some kind of curse. That's what cursing is,
That's age 15.
That's But there are
Coming, Jacob.
but there are those people who do that, and it doesn't just mean there is a type of person, not just an age group, but a type of person who thinks their parents are worthless, they're pure in their own eyes, but they're not cleansed from their filth. Their eyes are ever so haughty, their glances are so disdainful. So we're getting that. Now, how does 14 fit in with this topic? Their teeth are like swords. It's describing just a devouring mouth with huge teeth of knives and swords. How does that fit in with this pride and disdain?
Don't slander the others. Don't slander.
Okay, well, who are they gobbling up and devouring?
Whoever they're.
Well, what does it say?
Their parents.
In 14, what is it? The poor. Why? What does that have to do with disdain?
They think they're better than the poor.
The poor are worthless.
They don't
It's like
need it.
It's like verse 10. Oh, some slave. Who cares? Now, it's harder for someone like me to take advantage of the poor. I don't really. If there's a homeless person, there's nothing I can do to get money out of them. But in the ancient world, if I was a wealthy landowner and I saw some homeless person, I was like, hey, why don't you go work in my fields all season, and at harvest time, I'll give you a share of the harvest. And so he's like, oh, thank you so much. This is wonderful. I'll be able to feed my kids. He's working real hard all season, harvesting. When it's all gathered up into my barns and he comes for his payment, I'm like, you know what? No. You told me I was going to get paid. Yeah, but you're not. So get out of here.
Uprising.
So but what recourse did that person have? None. I mean, if he tries to attack me, I have my own personal guards. If he tries to go to the courts, I just say to the judge, hey, this guy's going to come in and give you this little sack of silver and just make sure he doesn't. Right? Now today, if that happened, you might be able to get the media on your side, maybe, if the judge was crooked. You might be able to. But it still happens today. The same situation. So they're just, the poor people, they're just devouring them. Literally, these people are dying because they won't pay their wages. This was a common thing, a common problem, is that you just, at the end of the season, you just didn't get paid. And they're pure in their own eyes. These worthless people. But they're not cleansed from their filth. Okay, so verse 15, Kathy.
The leech has 2 daughters. Give, give, they cry.
Okay, stop right there. I meant 15a. Okay, so this verse is a perfect description of the people above, right? And it's also a perfect heading for what's coming. Now, what's coming is this set of 4 things. It actually says 4. Did you notice that when you read these? It keeps saying there's 3 things, 4 things. Right? Over 5 times in this chapter, 3, 4. And then earlier in Proverbs it said there are 6 things the Lord hates, 7. Remember that? Mm-hmm. So what's the deal with saying this number, actually one more than that? When they do that, it shows like the epitome. When you see that in the Bible, like a number, actually one more. I'm including everything. Right? It's like I've heard a preacher say one time, there's nothing. I mean, it's like a 0 with the edges eaten off. So why say the edges eaten off? It doesn't actually make it any less. But it's just like a way of saying like totally nothing, right? He really, really hates it when he says these are 6 things, 7 things the Lord hates. It's just a way of doing that. A literary device for doing that. Okay, so we're going to see 5 of these sets of 4. And this leech person, I mean, doesn't that just sound like the devourer? And it's like a huge mouth. Just a leech. Give, give. It's like the 2 teeth of the leech. They just suck. Okay, so Kathy, could you finish 15b and 16, the list of 4?
There are 3 things that are never satisfied, 4 that never say enough. The grave, the barren womb, land, which is never satisfied with water, and fire, which never says enough.
Okay, so the grave is never satisfied. Death is never like, you know what, I got 9 billion people, so nobody else needs to die. I'm okay. I'm satisfied, right? It's never filled up. The barren womb is a little trickier for that, but it's a nice contrast of like death and life, the grave and the womb, and then the next one is water and fire. Like water creates, produces things, fire destroys things. So you got those little contrasts built in there. But the barren womb is never satisfied because, especially in the ancient world when it was a big deal, it wasn't like your life was better. Like today, a lot of people feel like the less kids you have, the easier your life is. That's just the typical. And if you have none, boy, you're free and you have more money and you have more time. But that was not at all the mentality. I mean, it was a big benefit, just a big financial benefit the more kids you had. And it was a big pride issue and a big shame issue if you didn't have kids. So, and that was for men and women, especially women, but both. So the barren womb is never like, that's okay, I'm good. You know, I was a little bit sad for a while that I didn't have kids, but now I'm fine with it. Sarah at 90 was still dying to have a child. Because it never goes away, because your whole life you're always reminded of the fact that you don't have everyone else. It's like, well, now that in my old age, my kids, I pass everything on to my kids and they do everything for me. That was like the retirement plan, was to have children in the ancient world. So that's why especially a widow without sons like Naomi was an especially bad situation. Okay. So never enough, never enough. Oh, the land is never like, you know what? I've been getting rain for 1,000 years. I'm good. I don't need rain this year. The land is never satisfied. It's always going to need it. Fire is never like, wow, I burned a whole bunch of stuff. There's a bunch of dry wood right next to me, but I don't need to burn that up because I've already burned a whole lot of stuff. So I'm satisfied. Never satisfied. Just give, mouth devouring, suck, the leech. You see that whole mentality. Now, what is the contrast with Agur, the writer of this?
Pride versus humility?
Okay, good, but specifically something Agur said about himself. Or something he said to God.
Foolishness? That he's not
Not
human understanding? He doesn't have wisdom?
these people, there are people like this. It's describing people that they are never satisfied. They want more. Greed. What does Agur want? He says, please don't give me a lot. I don't want to have nothing so that I'm stealing to get food. I just want enough to eat each day. Please, that's what I want. Don't give me more than that. You give me enough to eat each day, I'll be happy, God. I'll be content and satisfied, and I'll say, that's enough. That's all I need. That's enough.
And I'll praise you.
Yeah.
I'll thank you and praise you.
Yeah. So think about the opposite.
Gimme.
Yeah. And people like that are never satisfied. People who are devouring poor, trying to find ways to get more, it's never enough. I mean, there's always a point at which, like, I've known people, especially when I work construction, who are like, man, when I pay that rent each month, I'm like, oh, I'm good. I'm good for the next 3 weeks, and then I have to stress again. And they're just like, and they've said, man, but if I had it if I made just a little bit more per hour, I wouldn't even have to stress at the end of the month. I know I'm covered. So if I can just get to that next, but what happens when they get to that next? Then they just want more because they're like, hey, I don't have to stress. I can get this extra nicer thing. I can, yeah. I won't have to sleep on a futon anymore. I can buy a bed. Well, now I'm struggling to pay my rent again. Right? Hey, I can get internet at my house. I won't have to go to McDonald's to use the internet. As my wife and I had to do. We had to go to McDonald's. We wanted to check our email. And then finally we got a slight pay increase and we got it in our house. But then we're right at it was the same. Because you always, so it's never enough. But Agur says it is enough. And I don't want more. Okay.
What words would you use there? What's the contrast? What are your words?
Being satisfied versus never satisfied. Being content with just your daily bread versus never satisfied. Okay, and verse 17 is the end. This 11 through 17 is all about one group of people. And it starts and ends with stuff about the mother and father and the eye. Okay? So, 17, Linda.
The eye that mocks a father and that scorns an aged mother will be pecked out by the ravens of the valley, will be eaten by the vultures.
So notice this eye thing and this parent thing, right? The eyes are too pure, up in 12. The eyes are ever so haughty. Glances are just in. So you got this eye theme at the beginning and this parental thing. You know, my father's an idiot. Oh, they're always worried about. They're always saying, don't go to the prostitute. They're always saying crazy stuff. My parents are so stupid, right? The eye that does that, this is the end. Is saying this group of people, this kind of person, this is what happened. This is their end. The ravens of the valley will pluck out that eye. Now, culturally, it's because they'll get stoned to death by the community and left to be eaten by birds. But the point is, that's the end of those people. Now, our culture doesn't stone people to death, and we have different things. But the same principle applies. It doesn't end up well for you in the end. Okay. The next set, we have another second set of 3 no 4. Lynn, Major, could you read 18 through 19?
There are 3 things which are too wonderful for me. Yes, 4 which I do not understand. The way of an eagle in the air, the way of a serpent on a rock, the way of a ship in the midst of the sea, and the way of a man with a virgin.
Okay. Or a young woman in the nose. What do these 4 things have in common? This is the most difficult and also most interesting, in my opinion, of the sets. What do these 4 things have in common?
They can't be understood.
Okay, yeah, they're difficult to understand. Good. There's a lot of levels to this one. That is very good. Notice his humility again. When I see something amazing, like a bird flying or like some, I'm like, wow, that's amazing. Agar's like, that's too amazing for me. You see what I mean? Like when I see something amazing, I don't immediately go to, that's amazing because I'm stupid. Right? I just go to that's amazing. And I'm awesome for stopping to notice that, and other people are busy looking at their phones. I immediately go to pride. Okay. Just things I don't understand. Okay, so that's good. Good. There's a deeper level, though, beyond that. What? Okay, an eagle in the sky, a snake on a rock, a ship on the high seas, a man with a virgin or a young woman.
Get that last line.
Yeah, that's the key one. That's what it's building to. What else do you notice about, let's at least look at the other 3 if we're confused about that one, although they all have.
The way.
Okay, good. The way. 4 ways.
Is he trying to get into the head of, or the brain of the eagle and the snake and the head of the man? And
Well,
I don't know about the ship.
all of them are about movement, right? It's not saying the way of a sunset or the way of a mountain. It's all about a type of movement.
All of them have conquered what they're. The eagle has conquered the sky. The snake has conquered the rock. The ship has conquered the high seas.
Okay, and the man?
Has conquered the woman.
Okay.
But the man has made himself attractive to that woman.
Okay. Good. So attraction is definitely going to be involved. Okay. Let's take it one level at a time. So they're all amazing things. They all have to do with movement. What type of movement? Have you ever seen a snake move? It wiggles. It undulates. Right? A bird is not like a rocket, like, right? Not like a plane, like, birds are like flap, 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 soar. Oh, I get some hot air. I can glide up on that. I can circle. I can flap, flap, flap. So there is a sort of an undulation, like the snake and the bird. A ship on the high seas, it doesn't just now a huge, ginormous ship the size of, Lake County like they make nowadays. They're not. But an ancient ship would be like, whoosh, right, riding on the waves, guided by the wind. A man and a woman in sexual intercourse make a similar type of undulating movement. Okay, so these are amazing things that he's seeing. But there's also a mysterious aspect to it. How does that bird fly like that? How does it soar up? What makes it? Sometimes it has to flap up, sometimes it just soars up. How does that snake do that? Have you seen a snake? You try to think about what muscles is he pushing, and they can go fast. You ever see one that's scared? I don't know how they do that. Okay. Now we get into what Lauren was talking about, the man making himself attractive to the woman. A better thing is there is a mysterious attraction of love, not just sex. It wasn't like divided. I really love this woman, but she's not very pretty. It wasn't like divided as the whole person. There is a mysterious way that brings that couple together. Now, what's really amazing about it is the mysterious movement of love and chaste attraction. Chastity is not a virtue in our culture. It's laughed at. But it is a virtue in truth. And chaste attraction is a very mysterious thing because there is sexual attraction involved, but it's not just that. It's the whole person. Okay. There's one more layer. And that is when I go somewhere or when a bear goes somewhere, it leaves behind footprints. But an eagle in the sky doesn't leave a trace. A serpent, anyone seen this like snake markings because they've been gone through the dirt or the sand? But a serpent on a rock leaves no trace behind. A ship on the sea, for a minute, there's a little white foam behind it, but then it's gone, and it leaves no trace. And the way of a man with a young woman, if they're chaste, they leave no trace. Now, here's how I know that, because the next verse says, that's the way of a man with a young virgin. Here's the way of an adulterous woman. She eats and wipes her mouth and says, I've done nothing wrong. I've done no wickedness. Why does she wipe her mouth? Because it left a trace on her face, and she's like, oh, okay, I've done nothing wrong. So the eating is obviously a metaphor for the sex, and it's just satisfying your bodily desires. That kind of sex. It just satisfies my bodily desires, and it leaves a trace, but if I wipe it up good enough, no one will ever know I've done no wickedness. But what's amazing, what's wonderful to Agur is the way of a chaste relationship that leaves no trace. There's nothing to cover up, there's nothing to hide. It's like a snake on a rock. It doesn't have to go, hey, as I pass, please wipe my tracks out of the sand. It's a serpent on a rock. It leaves nothing behind. It's the eagle in the air. It leaves nothing. There's no tracks that an eagle leaves in the air. And now, of course, if you wanted to get really technical and talk about what would the trace be? Well, the trace would be the pregnancy of the adulterous woman. The trace would be the hiding of it, right? You have to meet in secret. It would be the guilt, the guilty feelings, plus the actual guilt. Like you are guilty before God. That leaves something behind in that kind of relationship. And then, of course, you've got all kinds of other things, STDs, and all the stuff that comes along with promiscuity and adultery.
Including like gossip.
Oh yeah, it leaves a whole trail of stuff behind. But the eagle in the sky, the snake on the rock, the ship in the sea, and the way of a man with young, they leave nothing behind. Isn't that like such a fascinating, there's so many layers of that?
I'm so glad you're here to explain it.
Okay, so verse 20 contrasts with verse 19, the purity of the couple in verse 19. And it compares with the raw appetites of the leech people in 14, 15, and 16. Their teeth are like they're just a big devouring maw. The leeches, give, never satisfied. I mean, think about adulterous relationships. They're never at it like a peace, right? They always need, that relationship always needs to be fed. Okay, even verse 12, they're pure in their own eyes, but they're not cleansed with their filth. Right? She eats, wipes her mouth, and says, I've done nothing wrong. Okay. The next set, the third set of 4 things, is in 21 through 23. Ellie, could you read those?
Under 3 things the earth trembles. Under 4 it cannot bear up. A servant who becomes king, a godless fool who gets plenty to eat, a contemptible woman who gets married, and a servant who displaces her mistress.
Okay, what do these 4 things have in common?
Unlikely to happen. I mean,
Okay, unlikely to happen. What did
it could, but it
Lack
doesn't usually.
lack of wisdom.
a lack of wisdom? You have a servant becoming king. You have a contemptible woman getting married. You have a servant, like a female servant girl, replacing her mistress. You have a flipping of the social order in all of these. A fool shouldn't get a full belly because a fool is lazy, all the things Proverbs have been saying. A fool throws away, a fool doesn't save. It's an upset of the social order. Now, in America, we have an issue, and that is an issue understanding this. And there's 2 things. One is good and one is bad. But one is, in the ancient world, if your dad was a blacksmith, you were a blacksmith. That's it. There was no option. There was no other option. God might bless your business and God might curse your business, but you better be righteous and it'll go well. Right? That's what Proverbs has been saying. So there was no moving up in the social order in the ancient world. So, a servant becoming king is like, so that's one that makes it hard for us to understand. The other that's bad, it's nice that we can move up, is that the American dream, which is, if you work hard, you move up, doesn't really set you up for the kind of contentment that Agur is saying is good and godly, does it? Right? I know that we've all been brought up to say that the American dream is great and other countries don't have it, and that's why we're better than them. Well, that attitude is not a very godly attitude, is it? I mean, I'm thankful that I live in this country where you can move up and we're not still going to McDonald's to get our internet. I'm glad of that, but it certainly doesn't promote contentment, right? How many movies are like, you know what, just be content with whatever you have? No, they're like, you can do it. You can be the Italian stallion and rise to beat the champ, right? Your little misfit band can win the championship, right? So many, our cultural story is we love to see somebody come from the bottom and make it all the way. We love to see that. I mean, if you don't care about the 2 teams in the Super Bowl, usually you root for the underdog. You know what I mean? And it's not just your team. But our whole culture has pushed us to sort of strive for as much as you can. Shoot for the stars. Get educated and you'll go far. Well, you know what? Maybe he should he likes to check people out at the store, so let's let him do that and be content with his life. Right? We don't promote that at all. We don't promote contentment in this country at all. So what God, the Holy Spirit, and Agur are saying is, we need to be content with our place. If you're a servant, you're a servant. Now, if it's offered to you, your freedom, then take it. Paul says that. But Paul says all the same things. Just be content with whatever you're in, situation you're in. So the point is, God gives us our place and our circumstances, and we have to just be thankful for it. Not strive. You see that the contentment is humble. It's humble to say, you know what? This is what I am. I'm just a guy who changes people's tires. That's it. That's okay. I don't have to go to night school to try to. Now, in the ancient world, the only option was something subversive. Some sneaky evil plot was the only way to move up. Now we can do it through other means, but the same things all apply. And go to page 3, just pushing on with this theme. It's the contrast between the leech person and the content person. And it's all about humility and pride. So, let's look at this set of 4. Diane, can you read verses 24 through 28? It's at the top of page 3 on the left.
Over here on the page. 4 things on earth are small, yet they are extremely wise. Ants are creatures of little strength, yet they store up their food in the summer. Hyraxes are creatures of little power, yet they make their home in the crags. Locusts have no king, yet they advance together in ranks. A lizard can be caught with the hand, yet it is found in kings' palaces.
Okay, so what do those 4 things have in common? Looking for the common denominator here.
That small things can do great things.
Okay, yes, it has to do with their smallness and their weakness. And they can do, I don't know, that great things. I mean, is storing up your food for the winter, is that a great thing?
Well, if you didn't have it, you'd starve. So.
Right, but they can survive and they can get by.
They're industrious.
Yeah,
They work together.
Okay, working together. I don't know if that fits with the lizard one, but the point is, they use what they have and they get by. They survive.
I don't get the last one about the lizard, though.
Well, the lizard, he's really quick and can fit through little crevices, and he gets into the king's palace. He can get in there. He's a little nothing. You can just grab him. He's a little nobody, but he can get in. And the ants, they're nothing. They're just ants. But what they can do is they can store up their food. And the coney or the hyrax, they don't have much strength, but you know what we can do? We have a way of climbing up and carving out a little home up in the rocks.
What about the 28?
The lizard?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just saying whatever little ability they have, they just use it. Their ability to get in little crevices. So, what is the point? These things are examples of wisdom for us because we don't have to be important or smart or capable or good at anything. We just have to be wise, which means do the best with what you are. Don't try to be something you're not. This is what I am. This is what I have. So, a good activity would be to sit down sometime today or this week and just list things that you have. Whatever. I have the ability to talk. If you have the ability to speak, what can you do with that? Well, you can praise God. You can share the gospel. You can build people up in your life and not tear them down. If you don't have that, if you don't have the ability to speak anymore, but you have the ability to see, you can praise God for the beauty of the world He made. There's just anything that you have or anything that you are, you can use. Like those things. Now those weekly things are in contrast to the next set of 4, which is the great things. So Candy, could you read 29 through 31?
There are 3 things that are stately in their stride, 4 that move with stately secure against revolt.
So you see the obvious contrast between this set and the previous set. So one of the contrasts is that it's not fair. What if the ant was like, why don't I get to be a lion? That would be cool. Well, you know what? You're not a lion. You're just not. So I used to think when I would meet somebody who was like good at something I wasn't, like, well, he's better at sports, but like I'm funnier. Or like, you know, like we all have different categories, right? But what happens is, hopefully, and this happened to me in like my early 20s, is that I met someone who was better looking, smarter, funnier, kinder, more godly, better at sports. Like in every category, this guy was better than me. And I kept like waiting to be like, well, yeah, but and then he beats me at chess. And I'm like, oh man. I mean, just like every category. And at first it was like troubling because I had thought it's all equals out. But then as I thought about it, it was really freeing. It's like, yeah, you know what? That's okay. God made me like this. It doesn't have to be even. Because when I was trying to be even, I was like, well, I have to, maybe if I really get good at guitar, I can be better at him than something. Or, you know, it doesn't have to be. It's okay. God made me this. I'm an ant. He's a lion. Whatever. I'll just do what I can do with what I am, and that's okay. I'll just be content. Okay, there's more there. You know, a king who is secure against revolt protects the social order. Like the way that started this whole section was the upset of the social order. There's some more good things in there. Look at 32. If you play the fool and exalt yourself, act like you're bigger and better than you are. This is all about being content with who you are. All about humility and contentment. Or if you plan evil, that's the other way to advance yourself. You can talk big and exaggerate to make yourself better, or you can actually like hatch some little plot, and then I'll own more land than anyone else in town. If you've done those things, put your hand over your mouth. You know why? Because just as the churning of cream, if you keep churning it, you're going to get butter. If you keep twisting someone's nose, blood's going to come out. That's just what happens. You apply that pressure, and that's what happens. Well, the stirring up of anger, there's two ways to stir up anger. Like this. Hey, Lauren, guess what? You know what so-and-so did? We stir up anger to get something. I want to make them against each other, whatever. Or this kind of stirring up anger. That was my land. You moved that boundary stone. You know what that does? That doesn't advance you. It just produces strife. You keep stirring the cream, it's going to turn into butter. You keep stirring up anger, you're just going to get strife. Just be content with what you are and who you are and what you have. Okay, so that's chapter 30. Now, if 30 and 31 are the epilogue of Proverbs, one would expect to see connections with the prologue. So the prologue was chapter 1 and all of 1 through 9. Chapter 1 specifically, but chapters 1 through 9 in general. Do you notice any connections so far with the prologue? Remember, we spent a long time on the first 9 chapters, right? No. Any connections?
Well, the first one is teaching good, and the last one is teaching don't be bad. Our
Yeah. Well,
In the beginning, it's all ways to live well, I guess.
yeah. Well, I mean, they both teach against adultery. That's one. But I see what you're saying. Yeah, it describes the greedy people well. Anything else?
Well, it was a contrast, good versus evil. I mean, any
Okay. Yeah. Good.
or right thing to do versus the wrong thing.
The very first proverb in 1:8 was listen, but you have to be humble to listen, that humility to listen. You have to listen to your father. My son, don't forsake my teaching. To listen to your father, you have to accept your role as the child, and your job is to listen. Not like the mocker who doesn't accept their role. Like, my parents are stupid. I'm great. I just want more and more and more. You accept your role. Chapter 1 is 1 through 9 really is a father giving advice to his son. And now in 30 and 31, we have a mother giving advice to her son. We haven't touched 31 yet, but let's do it. 31, what's the most famous thing in 31? Proverbs 31. The virtuous woman, right? Wise woman. The Eshet Chayil, a woman of virtue, woman of valor, woman of strength. Why is that virtuous woman the perfect ending for this book?
She gives birth to mankind. The lessons that she teaches are.
Okay, well, the whole chapter is a mother giving advice to her son. The virtuous woman would provide children for the son, the adult son. Okay, good. I never thought of that one. But why specifically for the book of Proverbs is the virtuous woman such a fitting ending?
Because she kind of lives out everything that we are told to do in the book.
She lives out everything we're told to do. So what we see is an example of all this stuff about wisdom. This is what it looks like in everyday life. Like none of us are going to be a king. And we need to learn. There's advice in here for kings. But none of us are going to be that. But lots of us are going to run a household. And this is what it looks like to do all these wise things. Now it's hard. She's getting up while it's dark. She's working hard. She's making decisions. Providing for other people. Not just focused on herself. But we get a great example of what true wisdom looks like in everyday life. Now, does anyone know if it says that this woman fears the Lord? Does it mention that? No. Yes, it does.
Yeah.
It mentions that.
30.
So, the book of Proverbs starts out, it says, the beginning of wisdom is the fear of the Lord. So, if there is a path going in different directions, and this path here, the first step on this path is to fear the Lord, and then there's more. Well, if you take that path, guess where you end up? Like this woman. You end up as the virtuous woman who can laugh at calamity because she's prepared for it. Who everyone in her life is calling her blessed. Like, oh, what a great mother. What a great wife. The men in the town are like, man, you are lucky to have a woman like that. Everyone's rising up and calling her blessed.
Blessed.
Blessed, yes. That's where this path leads you. I mean, I was studying for this a couple weeks ago, and I was driving. I was like, hey, Kathleen, can you read me Proverbs 31 while I'm driving so I can be thinking about it? And Kathleen's 10 years old. And at the end of it, she's like, that's really cool. It tells you, like, just what to be. And I was like, yeah, it does. What woman specifically, but person in general, can read that description and not think, wow, I hope I can be like that? And that's where the path that starts with fearing the Lord. That's where it takes you. A woman of virtue who can find. A woman of virtue who can find. Why is it so difficult to find a woman like that? This is also a mother telling her son what kind of woman to look for. When you are, 18 or 25, do you have the wisdom to know the kind of partner you're going to need when you're 50? When you're 80? How could you? How could you possibly know? You can't. You cannot know. So number one, you need a parent's advice. The mother's saying, trust me, son, this is the kind of woman you... Favor is deceitful, beauty is empty. A woman that fears the Lord. That's the kind of woman you want. Now that, you can reverse it. If you're a woman, that's the kind of man you want to look for. But you need your parents' advice. So this person who scorns their parents' advice, we've all seen it. We've all seen people who the parents are like, you do not marry that person. Okay, well, you're in for a lifetime of it, right? We've all seen that. But even beyond that, so number one, you need your parents' advice. Number two, by the way, that's why arranged marriages work. It's not romantic, doesn't make a great romantic comedy, but it works because parents know and kids don't know. Young men don't know specifically. But ultimately, a few chapters ago, Solomon said, a godly wife is a gift from God. Ultimately, a woman of virtue is from God alone.
Okay, what if you have parents that aren't wise?
Right, that's why I brought that up.
Aren't wise and aren't doing what they should.
Yeah, because there are exceptions. So that's why I brought it up, that ultimately it's really only from God. Maybe God gives you good parents who are able to guide you and he expects you to be humble enough to listen to them. But if he doesn't, it's still a gift from God. My grandmother spent a total of about 14 hours with her future husband before they got married.
14 hours.
Yeah, now he was in the war, so, and they wrote letters, or less. And I said, weren't you nervous about marrying? On their wedding picture, they're not standing very close together. He's just in his uniform, and they're the justice of the peace, and there's a picture, and they both look scared. She looks especially scared. I said, weren't you scared? Someone you hardly knew? You'd only spent a few hours, a couple dates, and then he was off, and he was gone the whole time. And she said, yeah, you take a chance with anybody. It's because even if you know them well, they're putting their best foot forward the whole time. I was like, well, that's a good point. Well, guess what? Their marriage lasted till they were 90s. And it was a good marriage. So the point is, it's a gift from God.